join me for the Pledge of Allegiance, and then he would remain standing after for a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Wyomissing Area School District stands in honor of Mr. Greg Portner. Mr. Portner passed away recently and served 8 years as a Wyomissing Area School Board member. We thank Mr. Portner for his contributions to the Wyomissing Area School District and support his family and friends. With these thoughts, we take a moment of silence. Thank you. Is anyone recording the meeting for the public? Thank you, gentlemen. Roll call, please, Mr. Boyer.
Mrs. Harenza.
Here.
Mr. Hershey.
Here.
Mrs. Kuhn.
Here.
Mrs. Phillips.
Here.
Ms. Rodriguez, excuse me.
Here.
Mr. Schippers.
Here.
Mrs. Taylor.
Here.
Mrs. Torres.
Here.
Mrs. Zabinski.
Here.
9 in attendance.
Oh, that sounds so nice. Welcome to visitors. Our upcoming meetings are, we have a school board meeting here in this room, January 22nd at 6 p.m. We have a finance and facilities workshop in this room on January 24th at 5:30. An executive session will be held following tonight's meeting for legal items. Is there any public comment this evening? Seeing none, we will move to board liaison updates. Curriculum, Mrs. Kuhn.
Thank you. So Dr. Woodard and I met Friday, I think it was, to review some of the curriculum items that we'll be talking about tonight and to come up with some potential topics for later in the spring. Dr. Woodard is going to be presenting the calendar, which is I think in front of you tonight, a draft of the calendar, which we reviewed in detail at our meeting. I think it's just important, like I realized how much goes into actually planning that calendar out. So much conversation and collaboration with the admin, the teachers, the teacher association, just checking on testing dates and service day needs, those kinds of things. So, and I think, Dr. Woodard gave a lot of attention to, when students need a break and when teachers really need a break. So I think a lot of thought went into that. So I think the draft tonight kind of reflects all of those things. And then Dr. Woodard will also be presenting about 4 new dual enrollment classes, which is really exciting because that helps our secondary students who are planning to move on to higher education. It allows them to receive credit for classes that they're taking here in the high school. We also talked a little bit about the addition of extra math learning time, which I think is also going to be talked about tonight, which is great for our 7th and 8th grade students. Increased math time is part of our math action plan and also part of the overall strategic plan. So that's exciting news. Future presentations and information, we talked about the internship program, total experience learning, the educational coaches that are in our district. And in March, we will be looking to schedule a workshop for the new science standards that will obviously impact all the science curriculum for all the buildings. So we look forward to that in the spring.
Great. Thank you. Facilities, Mrs. Phillips.
I have really nothing to share. We have not had a meeting. The only thing I can say is that our first meeting for the year is January 24th at 5:30, and it will be held in this room.
It's for PTA? Oh, no, you mean the meeting for the workshop, facilities workshop, sorry. Thank you very much. Finance, Mr. Schippers.
Yes, Mr. Boyer and I had an initial first meeting to kind of help me climb the learning curve. I got big shoes to fill from Mr. Pottiger, so that was very helpful. And the new members and I just had an orientation from Mr. Boyer as well as on the facilities side, so that was very helpful.
Great, thank you very much.
And I think we sent out calendar dates for the Finance Committee meetings, so I'm hoping everyone can attend.
Great, thank you. We're going to sort of move on to B, policy 006 discussion. It says Mrs. Harenza, but Mrs. Taylor is going to handle that a little bit. Oh, did I miss that? No, it's my fault. I sped right through the routine minute approval. Yeah, it was like mushed together under public comment. Then we go back to routine approval of the minutes. It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approve the following minutes of November 16, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. So we're going to move on to the policy liaison, which is Mrs. Taylor, and she's going to talk a little bit about policy 006 as well.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. So the policy in front of you is a policy that has been in existence for eons regarding what it means to be a board member. However, the first paragraph in bold is something that we would like to discuss and possibly add to our policy. So back when COVID hit, we changed our policy to allow for virtual attendance at meetings. And while that can be helpful, especially during the time of COVID, it's really important that we're all here as often as possible, face to face, so that we can have good, robust discussion about issues that are presented to us. So this paragraph basically covers that if you need to attend virtually, it is acceptable, but we don't want that to be anyone's preferred or regular method of board meeting attendance. We're also asking that if you do attend by Zoom or whatever platform we use, that you keep your camera on. It just makes you a little more accountable, and it also helps us make sure that whoever is on the camera is understanding and participating. So that's the gist of it. You will see in there a statement that the PA school code authorizes potential removal of a board member for failing to attend 2 consecutive meetings without good cause. That doesn't mean you can't go on vacation, you can't stay home to take care of a sick child, you can't go to a business meeting. But what it means is if you miss 2 meetings and nobody knows what the reason is and no one can reach you, we do have the authority to vote on that, whether or not you should remain an active board member. I've not seen that happen. I think we're all pretty good at communicating, attending, and being cognizant of the responsibility that we have. So this is the first draft. Everything else remains unchanged. Again, we're just addressing the frequency and method of participating virtually. Any questions, comments?
Anybody have any discussion?
Seems reasonable to me.
I just also wanted to clarify, I said this when we met with some of the new members, but first of all, I don't want anybody to read this as meaning that you can't miss a meeting. Missing meetings is fine. If you're on, and particularly now that there's Zoom, sometimes we feel like, oh, if we're on vacation, we still need to Zoom. It is fine to miss a meeting. It's when it's lots and lots of meetings, when it's lots of consecutive meetings, or the real problem is when somebody is participating the majority of the time by Zoom. That's all this is meant to be. So please don't feel that you can't go on vacation or even just be sick one day and say, I am not coming to the meeting. That's fine. And the other thing is that even, and I think it says, we'll use our best efforts to keep our cameras on. But for example, sometimes we've had members that need to be driving. If that's your case, no big deal. Talk to Rob or I or Mr. Arns and just say, hey, I'm going to keep my camera off because I'm driving, it's a little weird, or whatever you need to be doing. So it's just most of the time. Anybody else have any concerns, comments? Okay.
So we're okay with the board, first reading on January 22nd on the agenda?
Yeah, and so the way we handle policies is they get read at two consecutive meetings, and then we vote on it at the second meeting?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, thank you very much. Health and safety plan review, Dr. Randall.
Hello, everyone. So the I didn't even touch again, Scott. I was given too much power to have the remote for the presentation. So the health and safety plan, for those of you that are new, came about during the summer of 2021. So the pandemic began in 2020, and by that next summer, with schools reopening and money being allocated to schools, we had to develop a health and safety plan. We had a lot of guidance from PDE and the Department of Health when we initially created it. And now where we're at with it is we have to continue to come back to it every 6 months until this coming summer, as of now. Could that be extended? Yes, but as of now, we think June of 2024, we will be done revisiting the health and safety plan. So again, we're just looking at it tonight. We are not recommending any revisions. I'm going to give you a couple highlights, but we last reviewed it in June of 2023. And from there, we don't have any updated revisions. We actually haven't gotten any new guidance from the Department of Health since then. As I shared last time, our guidance was coming from PDE. It no longer is. PDE doesn't even have any information related to COVID-19 and the pandemic other than just links to the Department of Health site. Isolation is still recommended for 5 days of symptom onset, followed by 5 days of continuous masking. And so we are still implementing that here for any reported cases to us, staff and students. And then we are regularly giving out recommendations, either the school nurses or myself, based on Department of Health guidelines for reported exposures. As you recall, those get a little hairy to work through, so we have lots of questions that we ask, and we try to support our families in knowing what to do, when to isolate, when to contact a physician, potentially even when to test. What we've done this year, so we did offer a COVID booster and a flu clinic in October of 2023. That was for all of our staff. We did have a number of staff participate in that. We offered one in each of the buildings just for convenience. We have ordered COVID home tests. If you recall, when I spoke to you in June of last year, I had said that we were told that was the end of the free tests for schools. They came out again and we got more. So we applied when we saw the email come through earlier this fall, and we had about 125 of our staff receive either 2 or 4 home tests. I anticipate, just because they told us before they weren't coming out again, that we will get another one before spring break. They're really trying to support schools in staying open and having people have access to the tests. So with that said, if there's no questions or requests for revisions, we would be looking at board action at the next board meeting to just approve what we currently have in place with no revisions. Yes.
I just want to clarify, you could go to the last.
I can.
Oh, you're awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have 2 children.
Mm-hmm.
One is diagnosed and showing symptoms, the other is not. Does that child who is not showing symptoms need to isolate and not come to school?
No, the child who does not have symptoms would be recommended to mask for 10 days,
Okay.
but would not be required to, and would be able to come to school.
So if a parent would say, this kid had COVID, I'm keeping this kid home, is that an excused or unexcused absence?
That we work with the family, and we typically will put it through as an excused absence.
Okay.
We have had some families that happens more frequently than others, and we've tried to support them with either at-home tests and or communicating with their physician.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you, Dr. Lane.
You're welcome.
Do you want to hang out? You don't have to.
I do, I'm gonna be in charge.
Oh, okay. AKA she's keeping me moving. All right, well then we'll move to you, Dr. Woodard, for the school calendar review.
All right, sounds good. So I've actually created a presentation with all of this information all in the same slide deck. So we're going to get started with the overall agenda. We'll start with the school calendar discussion, move forward into program of studies. Within the program of studies, we're going to talk about middle level math. We're going to talk about dual enrollment additions, and we're going to talk about course name changes and very minor modifications. So that all kind of falls under that program of studies topic. So to get us started with the school calendar, each of you has a calendar draft at your seats, and I also created one to display here on the screen. I thought probably the easiest is to go through kind of month by month, starting with the beginning of the school year, just to talk a little bit about some of the dates and selections and identifications for these different colors. So you can see the very elaborate key at the bottom. The first Star is the first day of school for students. And that's also, that star indicates the last day of school for students as well. So you'll see that in August 26th as the first day of school, again, for students. The teachers would be asked to come back the week before. We have 2 days of in-service, the 21st and 22nd for all teachers. The 23rd is what's known as a clerical day. They can choose to work that date or before to get themselves ready for that. So we have our mechanisms to keep track of all of that in our frontline system. So the starting date of August 26th is the same schedule that we have for this current year. So it's that 4 days of school prior to the Labor Day holiday weekend. Okay, so the students and staff would be off the Friday and Monday of Labor Day. So if we would move forward to September, it's pretty much a full month of school with an early dismissal that Wednesday, September 25th. And that date is, again, primarily what we've been doing the past several years. It helps our teachers, gives them opportunities to get their student performance measures finished, which is part of their evaluation, and just really kind of the action planning that needs to be developed at the grade level, the departments, et cetera. So that helps us with that time. Moving forward into October, Columbus Day is on the 14th of October. That's also known as a county-wide in-service option. And so the beautiful thing about that is every district in the county does have an in-service that day, which allows some of our teachers who are in the specialty areas like art, music, phys ed, English language learner, technology education, STEAM, world language. So a lot of those more unique content areas, the opportunity for them to gather as a cohort across the county. So we really like to make sure to maintain that day as an in-service day to give those opportunities to those teachers, again, to network and learn with their colleagues across the county. So, you know, and then for everybody else, we have professional learning opportunities here on site. But that's the traditional Columbus Day in service. And then you'll notice that the way the calendar fell, October 31st is a Thursday, so Halloween, and we still do celebrate our parade at the Hills. And this year we had an early dismissal. We would propose that for next year we have an early dismissal as well that day. However, Friday, the 1st, would be another in-service day. We tweaked that a little bit. It's great for students, it's great for teachers, it's great for parents. That's a great one across the board because the kids can have their parties and their parades earlier in the day Thursday. They can go home, they can spend the evening going out trick-or-treating, and they don't have school the next day. So this year we weren't able to do that just because I think it was on Friday. So I thought, let's give this a trial. So I've shared this with several different sets of teachers, and they really approved of that particular schedule. Also, what's nice about that is the end of the quarter is October 30th. And that means October 31st is an early dismissal. If we need to get anything caught up, students do have that opportunity to do so, and et cetera. So the secondary really appreciated that option. So end of quarter, October 30th. We still operate on a trimester basis at the K-4 building, and that falls and it's kind of that mid-November, right before the conferences, which happen the week of Thanksgiving. And I know we talk sometimes every year about should we have Monday, Tuesday, K-6. The way the color indicates there, K-6 students would not report to school. We have the parent-teacher conferences. 7 to 12, the students have early dismissal at noon, and then opportunities for conferences, you know, the rest of the day. Monday, or the 25th of November, that is an option for the conferences in the afternoon, in the morning if they're K-6, and then also in the evening. So we offer that like 4 to 7 evening conference with our teachers, and that's highly attended. either in person or virtual. We have had, just for those of you who are new, we have had higher attendance and participation at the secondary level if we offer virtual conferences. People can kind of just get on the meeting, in the middle of the day or in the evening, if they have children at home, et cetera. So we really do want to, we love in-person conferences, and at the elementary, they particularly favor those, and we advocate for in-person conferences K to 4. But beyond that, if we can get adults on the Zoom or WebEx, we definitely want to take advantage of that. So we do that. Because the teachers work a very lengthy day that Monday, we have an exchange day in the afternoon of the day before the winter holiday break, which you'll see, I'll just jump ahead, I think is December 20th. So it's an early dismissal for students. And then since the teachers work those 3 hours back in November, they can leave once the students have been dismissed. That's the way we've been working that afternoon before the holiday break. So realistically, December is, I guess, kind of similar break to what we typically would have that whole weekend. Then we would return on January 2nd, which is a Thursday, and get the 2 days in that week. Next, you'll see in January, we have kind of that middle of the year, the midterm area. And so we would propose that we have the 4 days of midterms in a row, January 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th. The 14th, 15th, and 16th are highlighted in green because those would be early dismissals pertinent to 7 to 12 only. And then the Friday, which is the Martin Luther King holiday weekend, we would do a K to 12 early dismissal. So that is similar to what we have planned this year with that Friday of that holiday weekend to have a K to 12 early dismissal. Martin Luther King Day is a holiday for our students. It's noted as a flex in service because our teachers, in order to get that day off, they work the 6 hours sometime during the summer. And that's kind of a flex out of that day so that they, so it is, quote, a working day, even though they would have done their hours prior to that. And again, we have the functionality of Frontline, My Learning Plan, that we keep record of all of this. If I'm not mistaken, I think January 21st is the end of the second quarter, and so that would be the mid-year mark. So for any semester courses, they would begin on the 22nd of January next year. February is very similar to what it's been before. Again, an early dismissal the Friday before President's Day, and then President's Day being marked as a snow makeup day. We don't have many of those anymore, right? And for those of you who are new, we have been approved for a new 3-year cycle of flexible instructional days. We like to call them FIDs, FID days, and those FIDs, we have been approved for 5 flexible instructional days per school year. We can't go over those 5, but we could choose to implement a flexible instructional day rather than taking a snow day and having to make that up. If we have a particularly nasty winter, inclement weather, and we need more than those 5 days, and we would have to have a snow day, we could, if it needs to be before February 17th, and we've used up all those flexible instructional days, we could make up one of those on that President's Day. We hope that the weather doesn't cause us all those problems, and certainly within the past several years, those flexible instructional days have been great to have, and I don't even think, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Scoboria, we did not use all of our 5 last year.
Oh, it's for a mile, maybe
Yep.
2 or 3.
Right, I think that's about what it was. So we'll see what holds for the rest of this year, but also, looking in. We still like to schedule a couple of snow makeup days just in case, right? So one's President's Day, and then one is actually what would be Friday, June 6th. I wouldn't want to go into the next week, but we have that Friday if we have to add a day at the end of the year. March, okay, so here we go. If you take a look, the Easter holiday is extremely late next year. It is April 20th, which means February is, it's quote, a short month, but you know, you really only have President's Day. March is a very long month. And then April, you have to get through 2/3 of the month before you know, half the month really, before you get to the spring break. So we typically, over the past several years, have added an in-service day in March. So I propose that we add that in-service day on St. Patrick's Day, Monday, March 17th. And you know, I thought that might be a nice little break for our students, just because it's a pretty long stretch between President's Day and spring break. So that helps a little bit. So I kind of moved it. This year I think we're March 8th. So I moved it a little bit back just to try to break that long stretch up a little. And then we do have an early dismissal scheduled at the end of March on the 28th. And that's typical, and that's also around the end of the third quarter. End of the third quarter is the 27th. Again, it gives us that little bit of time if we need to get some stuff from our students, and just give our teachers, especially at the secondary level, just the grading piece really, you know, they need that extra time, so that would help. I do want to draw your attention to the spring break. At this point in time, we are proposing that we have the holiday schools closed Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and the Monday after Easter. That is not the full week as what we have this year, but the reason being, if we took off the full week, we'd end up, if we didn't change anything else, finishing on June 9th, which I don't think that we're very interested in coming back for a Monday, which would end up being a half day, typical, you know, and so I looked at that, had a lot of other input, and that was a bit of a concern. We did look at the possibility of having school on Easter Monday, and maybe, you know, having off the 15th instead, and then trying to find another day. But the input that I received all favored having Easter Monday off, rather than kind of adjusting that Monday, Tuesday. So I'd love to hear your input as soon as I'm finished here, you know, just your thoughts about that spring break of being Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Monday. I did check the draft of the BCTC calendar has school on Monday with an activity day on Tuesday. So in other words, you know, those students are in, which more than likely means that the majority of districts are going to have school, you know, a little bit that week at least. And I think we're one of the few who have off that whole week this year. It's not quite as typical as it used to be. So that's really kind of a big discussion point probably when you look at the differences between last year, or this current year, and proposed for next year. Well, I'm going to also bring this up, testing season. So when you look at the testing season, PSSAs, believe it or not, could start as early as, well, it's not even really that early, but it's April 21st, the day after the Easter holiday. I spoke with our school counselors, our administrators, and none of us like the idea of beginning a stated test the day they come back from, you know, 5 days from school. We don't think that's a great idea. But we do have to get our English language arts test in by Friday. Like, it has to be done Friday the 25th. So everybody had proposed that we actually do the testing Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It's a 3-day test. Then the following week, we roll right into math, which we have to. And then for the certain grade levels, we have to do science. We continues down that week. So in other words, February, March, and in through April are pretty long instructional days. And then we come back from the holiday, and we go right into PSSA, and then we go right into AP, and then we go right into Keystone testing. The last day of Keystone testing is the Friday before Memorial Day. Now, ideally, we'll finish a little bit before then, but that month, you know, the end of April in through most of May is all testing.
What is the actual window that we are allowed to do the PSA testing?
It is down here. So
That is when schools are allowed to do it. They can't do it any earlier.
you cannot do it before April 21st. Okay, I put April 22nd here because I'm proposing we have off the 21st. However, when it says May 19th, they used to give us a 3-week window and just said you can do whichever test whenever you want. Now it's you must do English language arts the first week, you must do math, and then you must go right into science, and then after that it's makeups. So that's why we have to get in the bulk of our ELA by the 25th, and then count on makeups after science. So they really.
And they didn't see the holiday break there at all when they decided to schedule? Because that's so the reason why I'm just asking, so interesting fact, I'm sure some of you don't know, there are a lot of school districts that take off the actual week after the holiday. So I was gonna say, why would we not take off that? Like, could we ever look at doing that, taking off that week? Because I know for a fact there are gonna be parents that are gonna be pulling their kids out the 14th to 15th.
Yeah, we talked.
So could we not take out that week and get rid of, say, another holiday like St. Patrick's Day to give that parents that week? But now because of the SSAs,
right, we have to be in school to get that.
doesn't work.
Correct. And typically, the holiday is not this late. I mean, it's really, really late next year. Because when I looked at it, I think it's like March 29th or 30th or something this year. So it is like 2-3 weeks post that. And so it really does abut right into the PSSA administration. I was shocked when I looked at that.
I can't believe that they did not give anybody breaks on that. That's shameful, I'm sorry to say, but it is.
So we just have to go with the testing window, and we were worried that if we did come back to school on the 21st and start, there are just so many kids that are out anyway, so if we hold off testing to the late as we can, which would be the 23rd, we have the best shot we can to get the bulk of kids, and then we have to get everybody else in the makeup window, which, again, testing a few kids in the makeup window isn't a huge issue. Testing a lot of kids in the makeup window can be a challenge because we also want to just try to get back to normal after the testing window, and it's hard to balance what's normal with, a lot of makeup. So, yeah, this is probably that's the trickiest part of this calendar is that whole spring break / testing. And upstairs, you do go right from one to the other because we test PSSAs because it's a junior, senior high, we test APs, and then we test Keystones. So it is nonstop testing. Interestingly, the 23rd is the last day of Keystone testing. That has to be done by then. I did hear that, like there are other districts that are proposing to be done with school like a day or two after Memorial Day. So they are going up to right up to Keystones pretty much to their last, day or two of school, which can be a challenge. We have a little bit of a leeway there to return to normal. After Memorial Day, we would propose a 2-day early dismissal, June 4th and June 5th for K to 12. And that it's actually a cap and gown. It looks like a gray smudge, but on May 30th would be graduation. Spoke with Dr. Jones, and if you recall, the same plan is this year, in that we finish before a Friday, and to bring seniors back. They're already kind of out because they're doing rehearsals and doing all this other stuff. So to actually bring them back after the last day of school is a little bit problematic. So he would prefer we have graduation on Friday night the 30th rather than bring them back after the last day of school on the 6th. So that's why I put that emblem in there, just to clarify that. So thoughts, initial interpretations, questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
Most of my parenting experience is in a private school system, not a public school system. Is there a reason spring break has to coordinate with the Easter holiday? Is that a public school thing, or?
I don't think it is. It's just, I think, I'm going to use the term that always bothers me. It's usually what's been done. It's tradition. I mean, we would have to have off Good Friday. And I think that's a day that pretty much like every school would have off Good Friday.
So you have to have off Good Friday, or you have off because every other school has it? Or is it a requirement?
I think we would frown upon if we didn't have Good Friday. I'm not
So
sure.
the BCTC.
Yeah.
serves all the school districts. So one of the challenges, we don't always have to match perfectly to the BCTC, but we try to. So I think not every school is the same, but most schools are taking some days off around those holidays, which then means our kids would have minimal conflicts for the BCTC.
Yeah. I have been in districts whereby because of snow and such, we've used the Wednesday before and the Thursday before the holiday as snow makeup days, but we've never used like Good Friday as a snow makeup day. In other places too, we've always reserved that as a holiday.
So it's not so much that there's a legal requirement, it's just sort of
What's-
sacrosanct.
Would you
Friday
have some
as well?
Friday?
Good Friday is the
Holiday,
holiday.
really.
Yeah, no,
Not everyone's Catholic.
Right, no, but
Right.
I think, I don't think it's just, I think it's just what, I think the teachers and the parents would be incredibly upset if we didn't have at least
Yes.
Right.
Thursday,
I'm not
Friday,
suggesting
Monday.
don't, I'm just
Yeah.
saying, it is odd, like, the strange thing, I don't know about but a lot of colleges, like, my daughter gets 0 days
Oh,
off
yeah.
at
No,
Easter,
Princeton
not
gets
Friday
0.
or Monday,
No.
none, so
Nor
it's just,
do-
yeah.
Nor do the public school systems in almost all of Philadelphia. So I was just curious
Yeah.
why this, because you were mentioning March is such a long month.
Right.
If your spring break didn't have to coincide with a religious holiday, you could
Right.
fix that.
Right, yeah. That's a great question.
I think historically though, it's because Passover is the week before Easter, and then, Easter Sunday happens, and and then there's Orthodox Easter, which
We have
is usually a week later. It's very rare that it's on the same day. It has to do with the moon phases and all that stuff, but that way, all of our students are getting a break, and I believe mid-April is also usually when Ramadan occurs. So next year, we'll cover the 3 biggies of religious holidays in the spring. So, yeah.
Would you anticipate a lot of students not coming to school on the 14th and 15th? It's only 2 days, parents just feel like we're on vacation anyway.
Yep.
And I guess along with that, practically, how much of a difference do you think there would be 10 days off in a row coming back for the 1 day, then PSSAs versus 6 days off in a row versus coming back? Like, does it make a difference to students if would those 2 days make that much of a difference in terms of what's going to happen a week later when they take the test?
So I think people choose to take vacation when they choose to take vacation. So I think that it could be that there will be a few families who take the 14th and 15th off, but I think there'll be other families who choose to take October 21st week off, and miss 5 days of school there. So I think it's hard, because I think more people just choose to take.
As the kids get into activities at the secondary
Yes.
level, a lot of times that drives the families,
Right.
right or wrong, how they take their days, because the teams are going to practice some of those days, so.
Yeah, if you're in a high school
That
sport
drives-
spring, you have to be
Right.
at practice, even though
Now,
school's
if your
closed.
children are younger or maybe not in activities at that time, so I think is what a lot of the families do, is they plan around the activities that they have, children have.
But I will say, we've been conditioned to have that week off. So we will hear it from a lot of parents as to why we did not take those 2 days off. They will say, hey, all these independent days are great, St. Patty's Day, that's great, blah, 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 but why did we not put it towards Easter break?
I think the one issue is like that St. Patrick's Day, that's an in-service for our
Yes.
teachers. So we're like still
Yes.
working. So, I have to get, and just so everyone knows, we have 180 student days. We have 188 teacher days. So I also have to make sure that we have the 188 plugged in. And so those yellow dates count towards those 188 days.
True.
So,
But we do have other pink days in here that parents are gonna be like, we have a lot of days off. I'd rather have the full week for Easter break or spring break, whatever you want to call it.
I mean, really, it's, the Friday before Labor Day,
I know.
the Monday after Thanksgiving, and I think,
February.
February as the President's Day holiday, yeah.
And May
So-
28th, so.
And Memorial Day, but I can't,
I know.
change that.
And
So
we just say, hey, you don't want to come back on June 9th. Which is the other alternative, is that we push it to that next week, and I don't think anybody wants to come here on Monday.
That would be a half day too, but.
It would be a half day, but if you think summer starts on the 6th, I don't know.
I just know that parents will just pull their kids on the 14th and
They will.
15th, and it will be a lot, so.
Well, my question was sort of along those lines. What are the implications if parents pull kids on the 22nd, 23rd? Do you need certain critical mass for the PSSAs and other implications to the kids whose parents do keep them out?
So, I mean, we do say that you will not be excused for an absence for an educational trip during the PSSA window. So they could take them out the 22nd, but if we're starting PSSAs on the 23rd, we would have to mark that as unexcused. Whereas the 14th and 15th wouldn't be marked unexcused. That could be a legitimate educational trip.
Do we think there's going to be a significant amount? I mean, can you guesstimate after Easter how many usually people vacation that week after Easter?
I don't think it's I don't think the numbers are too high,
okay.
After that. Yeah, I'm certainly not at the building level, but I don't see all the ed trip requests, but I don't think many people extend too much into that week. I think that's what the counselors were worried about the 21st. If we were to make that a student day, they were very worried, as were the principals. But the counselors, and the reason I mention counselors is because they are typically a very large part of the testing process. And so they understand, and that was one date that they were very nervous about bringing students back that early. Because they figured if they bring them back that early, and if it's a testing day, we're gonna be making up quite a bit. And again, I look at it as, again, if you celebrate Easter, Monday is the next day. And so you could be with family a few hours away and you might not come home till Monday. Whereas, other times people say, well, Thanksgiving is Thursday. You have a few days to get home and, it's just tradition for Berks County schools to have the Monday after Thanksgiving off. So that's a little bit of a difference between Thanksgiving and Easter, is that, the Easter Monday is right after the holiday and traveling home. Thanksgiving, you have a little bit more of a break. But I know each of us personally probably has a preference of one or the other, or we like and appreciate both of those days, just because of family commitments too.
I have one question and then just a comment. So the way this calendar is, excuse me, there are 180 student days, but since the elementary kids don't come on November 25th and 26th, they're actually only at 178.
They're considered active days, so we can count those as student days technically, so we don't get any penalty for that. So, yeah, they're identified as active 80 days.
Thank you. And then, I'm sorry, I had a comment as well. If we could just add somewhere in the upper corner the early dismissal times by building, especially for new parents or if you have kids in different schools, it can be really hard to keep track of that sometimes.
That's a great point, and it's actually easier to do now. Just had this conversation with
we
Mrs.
just
Kuhn,
talked about that.
right?
Okay.
Because before, midterm early dismissals were different times than regular early dismissals. Now, an early dismissal time is always a certain time at each building. So that's nice. So we could actually, as long as I can get Ms. Pivotto to fit that on the paper, which is probably the hardest part, we could do that because all scheduled early dismissal times are consistent in each building level.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, Terrie.
That's okay.
Getting back to the days, though, when is that going to change? Because we are now changing to hours. No.
Not necessarily.
Not yet?
So the rule had been you must have students attend 180 school days, and if you're an elementary student, 900 hours. Okay, secondary students, 180 school days and 990 hours. The new rule that came out in December, that I believe it comes into fruition anytime now, is 180 days or 900 hours, and 180 days or 990 hours, which technically means, I wondered who was going to bring this up. Okay. Which technically means we could schedule schedule 178 days, as long as we had 900 hours for elementary and 990 for secondary. Here's the concern. We talked about it a bit at the IU, and I don't know how much Mr. Scoboria has talked about it with other superintendents, but as the assistant superintendents, we've talked about it. We would have to work with our association because the teacher day still is 188 days. So that means we would have to transition those 2 student days into more professional learning days. So the solicitors have been advising, not yet. Like there's a lot of other discussions that have to happen before it's fully implemented. But you're correct, it is hot off the presses as of December that they have changed the day/hour requirement. You don't need to meet both, you just need to meet one or the other.
Just to kind of maybe give the board, so in the strategic plan for the board is more discussion over the next year or so about at least looking at schedules. Now, whether or not the board ends up making any changes to schedules, we don't know. But it will be over the next year and a half that there'll be opportunities for the board to further study schedules kind of more in depth, and not just the board, but groups of teachers and input from parents and so forth. So we kind of, the superintendents in Berks County felt that there's something there, that there probably just needs more time to kind of look at it and get your stakeholders together and sit down with your association. But that could be something that the board at least chooses to study when you have a couple different, maybe models or options in front of you. And, we're probably 6 months or a year away from having that kind of information. But I think to Dr. Waters' point, it is something that opens the door for more flexibility moving forward. But we're just not at a point where we can make any kind of a recommendation using, what was just passed, I guess, a couple weeks ago.
I want to see that school district make that choice first, so that 3-day weekend, and then we'll watch that. See how
But
that
probably
works
more to
out.
follow as the state tries to better understand
Yeah.
the options and the flexibility for that.
Okay. And then one more quick question in regards to the spring break again.
Yes.
Is this the new norm? Because I know that's going to be asked by parents. Are we going to get rid of that whole week off, or is it just because it's so late this year?
So I think, first of all, this current school year is the first year in a while that we have the whole week because of construction, COVID, like all these things. So realistically, this may be my first year here, like in the 5 years I've been here, that we actually had the whole week put into the schedule in advance. And again, I guess if the question is this going to be the way we move forward down the road, I think we have to look at it from year to year and see how things fit. It's just, again, when you look at where days land, and I will tell you, I would make a guess that we would have a whole lot more kids absent June 9th. But then I also say, how much instructional value is June 9th? Like, I think we also have to start looking at, where do we get the bang for the buck? We have kids in school earlier rather than later. And that's why some districts are starting earlier and earlier and ending earlier and earlier, because, they want to get as many instructional days in before testing, and just to make sure to give students that opportunity to be proficient. But, I think it really realistically depends year to year how the calendar of the days fall. I think, we brought this as a draft, and I just really wanted to hear your input and thoughts, and we're still working, before we finalize it. Ideally, we would love to come to have board approval as this is an action item on January 22nd. But as you can see, we have also waited till February in many years past. That's why,
Just on that note with the timing, the BCTC puts out a draft schedule well ahead of any of the districts. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Woodard, they put out to start somewhere around the 19th or 20th of August.
Correct.
Now, since that time, a lot of districts in the county have given feedback, and many of us designated that either we're recommending to our boards or, maybe have taken action moving more to the 26th. So we think in the end, once boards decide, then the BCTC will go back and make an official, and it could be, maybe it's not the 26th, but I think at least they would move it to the 21st, 22nd, if not all the way to the 26th. And our hope would be in the end, selfishly, that our schedule matches the BCTC, so our students have less disruption. But Some of the schools have tried to move the calendar activity a little quicker to give the BCTC, the accurate information on what the districts are doing. No pressure. If the group wants to talk some more, we can certainly do that. We can approve it in February like we have. If the group thinks they're ready, we can get it out in January and get it out to families so they can make their plans. So it's.
I was ironically going to ask, maybe it's going to not be a good idea, but like, we've talked about June 9th, but is there any reason we couldn't go earlier in August? But it sounds like that might be a moot point. Because we have 2 days right there, 9th and 20th, that's.
Certainly, it's a new board. Last year, we brought 2 options to the board, last year. And obviously, we know the board's changed. And the board at the time, we kind of brought, starting the previous week and then starting on or about the 26th, the equivalent. The board at that time was very strong about starting the 26th, feeling like we're still before the holiday, but didn't want to be 2 weeks before the holiday for family time. The districts in Berks County are kind of split. There's a group of them are trying to move towards that week of the 19th, 20th. Then there's a group that are kind of starting around the 26th. So it's still split in the county. So we're hoping the BCTC, whatever we decide, splits the difference so that kids have minimal. But that's certainly the board,
like if you want,
the board could move this up if you wanted to.
I mean, this is like a solution to me if you want an extra day in March or an extra vacation. Like, I don't know, summer seems so long. Send them back.
I think so then that kids can come back for fall sports and it's 2 weeks before
it's
that.
way,
Right.
like, we've had
So,
this discussion.
Yeah,
I mean, it's-
that's my big thing is that then you got kids coming back, for preseason on whatever. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
It just seems like that.
Teachers who have to start a whole week prior to that.
And they have to start a week prior to that. Yeah.
So you,
And to address what Mr. Hershey and Mrs. Phillips were saying about Easter, spring break, and PSSA testing, I can tell you, working in an elementary building, coming back off of 10 days off for Christmas break, the first day they're either zombies because they're exhausted from not having their regular schedule, or they are bouncing off the wall because they're not used to sitting and having to take a test. So I do think if we made that Easter break the whole week before testing, our scores would be affected by that because they're just, it's 2 days, but for an 8-year-old, 2 days is a lot. Yeah.
Can I just make sure I understand the BCTC piece? Even if we approve this on the 22nd, BCTC doesn't take our guidance and does it differently, are we ultimately pressured to sort of conform to what they're doing? We can still go our own way.
Yeah, they try to look at, I guess 16 districts use the BCTC. They try to meet in the middle, more or less, so they put out a draft, I think in hopes of what, but then they reflect after everybody's made their decision. And then, so last year, they ended up kind of meeting the 2 groups in the middle to reduce it on each side. So ultimately, they'll make their own decision, and we'll make our own decision.
Okay.
We don't have to change it, and our kids get service, though, all the days. So we run the bus from here those days if we're not in session and the BCTC is. So our kids will certainly have access to all the days. It just is more disruptive. But yeah, I saw the preliminary list from Berks County, and a lot of districts were pushing to the 26th with the way the calendar fell. So we're hopeful that the BCTC pushes pretty far to that day.
Just so you're aware, I think in several recent years, there had been a push to start the 20th, 21st, 22nd, to get 6 or even 8 days in before the Labor Day weekend. That seems to be readjusting a little bit, and more people are looking to just get the 4 days, which is what we've been doing.
Yeah, we were the
so
outlier this year, but it seems like more.
We were. Yeah.
Okay, so since we have a really full agenda tonight, would the majority of you be okay, understanding nothing's perfect, a whole calendar will never not have blips, and or the majority of us happy seeing this for a vote next meeting? Okay, thank you. And on a positive note, I will tell you that the one thing I consistently get thank yous for is that half day before Christmas break from teachers. They are so appreciative of just how that feels to them. So thanks for building that in. All right. Thank you, Dr. Woodard. We'll move along to the junior, senior high school course of study.
Yep. All right, I'm gonna roll it here. Okay, this looks like a lot, so bear with me. All right. Oh gosh. Oh, that's right. All right, so, middle, actually, can we go back? Nope. I know. There we go. You skipped that part. Good try. Okay, so you heard me talk quite a bit about midterms, right? But what you didn't see on that calendar were final exams. I mentioned 2 days at the end of the year for final exam. I'm sorry, 2 days at the end of the year for early dismissals, K to 12. A committee of teachers and building administrators had been working upstairs at junior senior high school to talk a little bit about midterms and finals. For this year, our 7th and 8th graders are not taking midterms. They use that time for diagnostic tests, which help the teachers to make instructional decisions in the classroom, as opposed to saying, take this social studies midterm that's cumulative, and I'm not going to really use those results from here forward. We're going to keep going. Rather, I'm going to use this English language arts and this math information to help me guide my instruction. It's been a good thing at the middle level, and so that caused us to say, do we need to really investigate midterms and finals across the board, 7th and 8th grade, middle level, and also 9th through 12th. So Dr. Jones and his team brought together a team of teachers, and they had met multiple times and kind of keeping me in the loop, and also incorporating the school counselors. Currently, we do have a lot of instructional minutes lost because we are administering midterms and finals. I mean, when you look at it, it's 8 early dismissal days, 4 in the middle of the year and 4 at the end of the year. How much are we using that information? In other words, if we are, it's a good bang for the buck, okay. If we're not, should we have kids in class, and doing something a little bit more appropriate? Also, something to keep in mind, as far as final exams, all of our students who are in AP courses, their final exam is the AP test. They do not have another final exam. So, okay, we have 500 exams that we administer about every year in AP. Now, when you think about other courses, students can be exempt from their finals if they have a certain grade in their courses. And so a lot of our high flyers aren't taking any final exams anyway because they have great grades. So who's taking the finals? The kids who are struggling. So I thought, that's interesting. Because we're just, making it, I think, putting another barrier in front of some kids. The majority of our 4th quarter, you saw the end of April, all of May, testing. So we've been talking a lot about student mental health, increased anxiety. What can we do to address all of that? So all of those conversations have been happening, and so we thought, is there a better way? So next slide. All right. The collaborative discussions have led to, it's still important to give a student a test that might be more than just a unit test, that might be more cumulative. Some of our students many of our students are progressing to post-secondary. Many of those will be expected to take midterms and finals. We want to give them experience with that. In addition to kiddos who are taking AP, maybe they're not, they still should engage in that. So we decided, let's come to a compromise. We're going to keep the midterms for the high school students. We're going to continue to use the midterms at the 7th and 8th grade for diagnostic testing that's connected to instruction. Also, we use that information for future placements, for course recommendations. So we, again, we're getting a bang for our buck. We're using the information that's given to us. We're going to take the final exams from the schedule. And when we really started to talk to a lot of teachers, many of them, it was a project, a paper, a presentation, or another unit test. There weren't not that many cumulative tests. It was just happened to be given at the final exam window, if that makes sense. So this has really been a lot of conversation over about a year. But we tried it out, this year with the midterms at the middle level. And so I wanted to kind of bridge that between our calendar discussion and our program of studies discussion, because that's why you have a few less early dismissals at the end of the year. But it's a big deal to make that jump. We want to make sure everybody's aware of it. But I'm not going to say with every decision, There's never 100% of people being satisfied and happy, but this did take people from a lot of different departments and again, teachers and administrators and counselors to come to this. And so we think we're still giving students an opportunity to sit for those larger tests. Oh, and by the way, I said, well, Keystones are another example. Keystones are technically an end of course assessment, but we were having our kids in Keystone courses, algebra, bio, and lit, still sit for a final. Said, but you're not doing that for AP. Why are we doing it for Keystones? It's the same kind of test. So even some of our practices, let's just question, like what makes the most sense. So, like I said, we've come to this decision. So that is, it's kind of woven into the program of studies too, just because of, grade calculations and expectations and calendar. So does anybody have any quick questions about that? Okay.
I think it makes sense.
Okay.
I mean, they're sitting for a month doing pretty much just testing, and then they're going to take another test on what they've already been tested on.
Right, right. Yep.
So didn't they used to have like a whole bunch of half days at the end for
So
high school?
those are those 4. So now we only have 2 K-12. The last day we normally have, and then one before
That's
that.
why it's 2.
Yes.
The
Yep.
seniors will be going.
Yeah.
Seniors are gone.
Yeah.
Seniors are going, that's right. So everybody else gets to benefit from that, but the seniors. Okay, all righty. Moving forward, sorry, thank you. Okay, middle level math. So we're gonna get started here. For those of you who haven't been on the board, just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about math. And our goals to look, and by the way, they're addressed in comprehensive and strategic planning. When you look at our data in math, it's obvious that we have some improvements that are necessary in achievement, specifically at the middle level. We did, and I can get into this at another time, and when we meet specifically individually, but we have put together new resources, K-7. Last year, we saw some improvements, specifically K-6. We still have some ways to go at the middle level. It's going to take time. Everything takes time. I think resources are a part of it. I think looking at course sequence is a part of it. I think increasing instructional minutes is a part of it. In other words, there's not one way to fix this. We have to look at it from a variety of angles. And so trying to continue to improve our math achievement, we're going to tackle it a couple different ways. Really, a lot of this discussion started last year with our math teachers. We met last winter, last spring. We were kind of like, let's just talk about what happens if we did X, Y, and Z. And so we couldn't quite swing it for this current school year, but we are ready to move forward with our planning and our action planning for next year. So it's a part of our program of studies. When you take a look, and again, we want to make sure that we have kids that are ready to be successful with algebra and beyond. Okay, so you're really looking K-8, okay? So moving forward, let's use a sample cohort student. So they are currently in 6th grade right now. Okay, so next year they're going to be in 7th grade. Those 7th graders, the bulk of students we're proposing to take Math 7. That is based on the skills and standards that are required for students to become proficient in 7th grade. We're going to call that course Math 7. There's a group of students based on established criteria that we have identified who will enroll in accelerated pre-algebra. That's no change. Our highest group still does that, okay? So no change to the sequence. Those 7th graders next year who meet the criteria that we need will go right into accelerated pre-algebra, same as this year and previous years. When those 7th graders move into 8th grade in 25-26, those kiddos who are in Math 7, the bulk of the 7th graders who moving into 8th grade will go to a class called Algebraic Concepts. The reason it's called Algebraic Concepts is because when you look at the 8th grade standards, majority of them are algebraic concepts. So it fits in complete alignment with what the state expects. Those kiddos who are in the accelerated pre-algebra as 7th graders will move to the accelerated algebra 1, same as they're doing right now if you're in that group of students. So no change to them. If we continue to 26-27, they now are in 9th grade. Those bulk of students who are in algebraic concepts will transition to academic algebra 1. Algebra 1 is a keystone course. Technically, the state considers it to be a high school math course. We were having the bulk of our kiddos in algebra as 8th graders. We had 20% to 25% of our kids proficient on the 8th grade PSSA, and we had just about a third of our kids proficient on our algebra keystone. There's something not working there. They need a better, more effective foundation, and they also probably aren't developmentally ready for algebra 1 in 8th grade. Now, listen, those kids who are in accelerated are doing just fine. There's no reason to change anything. But for the rest of those students, we want to give them a much more solid foundation to get them ready for algebra 1. So just as the state expects it to be a high school course, 9th grade, it would be a high school course. Those kiddos who had the accelerated algebra 1 in 8th grade will move to honors algebra 2, which is what they do right now. Again, no change to their sequence, okay? So that's this year's 6th grade and really their path for 7th, 8th, and 9th. We're actually adding like that extra year of, 8th grade foundational math before algebra. You might say, what about the kids who are in 7th grade right now? What happens with them? Because right now they're in a class called pre-algebra or accelerated pre-algebra, okay? What we're proposing is that those 7th graders will move into 8th grade math, that same course called algebraic concepts. So it's based on the 8th grade standards, all right? The nice thing is, those sections of algebraic concepts for the bulk of those kids will be co-taught. 2 math teachers in there to really make sure to shore up those skills. Those advanced kiddos who had accelerated pre-algebra in 7th grade are going to move to accelerated algebra 1 in 8th grade. No change to them. So they follow that same path that we have. And then in 9th grade, again, that academic algebra, they're going to go into that, the bulk of those kiddos, and then the rest of them move into the honors algebra 2. No change. So I just kind of wanted to walk you through as if I'm a current 6th grader or if I'm a current 7th grader. And it's really that change of a math 7, which is all 7th grade skills and standards, and then that 8th grade, which are mostly algebraic concepts that we're going to give before that algebra 1. Okay? The math department was very supportive of this because they just feel like there are just too many kids taking algebra 1 before they're really ready. So they think that this is one step. Again, not saying everything is a magic button, but this is one piece of it. We move forward. Oh yeah, you guys probably can't see this. I will share a link in Friday's update with the whole program of studies. It's like 90-some pages long. You don't have to read it for homework, but it gives you a resource. This is included in that program of studies. The program of studies...
We'll share the PowerPoint right after.
Yeah, we can share the PowerPoint, but I'll definitely give them the link to the actual program of studies. So you can go into each department and all the different courses that are offered in each department, because that's really what the program of studies is about, is to help families, students, parents, really navigate what options there are for courses. But I just wanted to share that course map just because it's a little different than what has been previously advertised. But this is in that link for the program of studies. Yeah, go ahead.
How does it work today with the 5th and 6th coming up to the high school? Are we testing the kids over the summer as to how they get into the accelerated classes, or is that determined by teachers?
Right. We utilize the math data that we have at the West Reading building, which is part of our Eureka plan, but also we have IXL diagnostics, so we're able to see the specific skills of where kids are, and we also take a look at projections that see how, this is from the state, how successful, what's the percentage of probability that students will be successful and ready for Algebra 1. So we have all this data that we're using, and that's why we've established a certain criteria to make sure that, these are the kiddos that we say can go into this course. We would rather not take parent requests, because sometimes, like, we have a multiple criteria system, and we really strongly believe that we can identify the kids who are ready and the kids who will benefit from that additional year, and the majority of kids are going to benefit from that additional year. But it's not just one test, it's not just one snapshot, it's not just one teacher recommendation. It's a lot of data all coming together.
Well, what if we have a kid that all of a sudden it clicks in?
Yeah.
Can we bump them up then?
So the interesting thing is that typically when developmentally it clicks, there is an option. So if I'm taking Algebra 1 in 9th grade, I think, oh my gosh, can I get as far as I can? You can take Algebra 2 and Geometry and double the same year in 10th grade. There still are other options to test out of a course and like something in the summer, but I think the more realistic is to use a math elective and take Algebra 2 and Geometry. That's the doubling that we suggest, and that still lets them get to calc and such. So yeah, it's not like we are determining in 6th grade you're never going to get to X, because there are a lot of kids who 8th and 9th grade things start clicking a little bit more. We can make sure to get that into their schedule. So yeah.
For these math courses, are there tiered levels? So you have a student who works really hard, tries their best, and just doesn't get it, or needs it taught at a slower, more repetitive pace, but not LS level. Do you know what I mean?
Right. So like within the academic Algebra 1, they're going to be co-taught still for. So that helps us to be able to run small group sessions and do something. Then our coaches are working with our teachers on how to deliver that more effectively. So in other words, not everybody 28 students looking, or 24 students looking at a teacher, and we're all doing exactly the same thing all of the time. There's a lot more differentiation that's happening there. So
At what grade is that?
Co-taught for the academic Algebra 1. So
And
like
they're not
8th grade.
co-taught in it. Oh.
I'm sorry. Algebraic concepts. I couldn't see.
In 8th
Yes.
grade. So the
Yes,
co-teaching
yes,
occurs in 8th grade,
Yes.
but no other grade.
We do have it currently in something else, but we're adjusting that. So it occurs right now mostly in pre-algebra, mostly in 8th grade. And so we're keeping it in 8th grade to give them the best shot so that they have the foundation ready for 9th grade. If we have students who are not successful with Algebra 1, the following year we do have a co-taught right now for the kids who are redoing Algebra 1. They actually have
I
that.
would be done. So,
But
here's what
it's
I'm
not
concerned about.
official.
I hear great things about the co-teaching classroom.
Yep.
From teachers and from the students.
Mhm.
So I'm trying to understand, are we doing away with some co-teaching that's already occurring now but won't?
Can you go back?
You can also get back to us too.
No, co-taught is happening there at grade 8 math algebraic concepts.
Now.
And it will happen next year.
Uh-huh.
Algebraic concepts will be co-taught.
Continue to be co-taught.
Yes, at least to get us through this part. We have to see how things transpire
If
with
you
the extra
change the
year
bigger
and all of that. You know what I mean?
Okay,
But
so we're
next
not
year-
adding any co-teaching, but we're not taking any away
Correct.
from right now.
Correct.
Some
Yeah.
of those classes are very low in sizes, correct?
It varies. I mean, we might have, anywhere between 15 and 25, I think. It just depends on the section. But there are a few low teens ones, I would think,
So to share,
Yeah, and I don't know what your son's.
and I really shouldn't,
Yeah.
because we're on camera. My son is in one of those classes.
Okay, you know.
He loves it. He absolutely loves it because he's in one of the smaller classes. He actually could have gone into the accelerated, but because of his anxiety, we didn't want to hammer him with a whole lot of accelerated classes. He's back to loving math again, I can't say enough about our freaking staff. I cannot say enough good things about them. And he really loves this class again. So, thank you.
Yeah, that's the teachers and that's the ability of co-taught, but also small class sizes. I mean, you hear us talk about both, as being very important. So, but Dr. Jones and I talk all the time, like, it seems like every year we change something, we don't know what works and what doesn't work. So we have to stick with co-taught, to see over the period of a couple years of, is this working and do we have proof that it works and data, what's it showing us? So We still have it planned for that 8th grade piece for next year, okay? Here's the other piece. So we're tackling the course sequence, but we also need to tackle instructional minutes. I'm gonna be the first to say, just increasing minutes doesn't solve the issue. You have to make sure that you're increasing minutes with effective instruction, right? So currently, we have 7th and 8th graders who are getting math 41 minutes per period, 6 periods per cycle, a total of 246 minutes per cycle. That's what kids get in 7th and 8th grade. I'm gonna tell you, it's the lowest in the county, by far, okay? We are proposing that we have 41 minutes per period, 8 periods per cycle, which gives us 328 minutes per cycle. It's about 25% increase in math instructional time, okay, per cycle. If you take a look, you might say, well, what are cycles? Cycles are 6 days. So you have 180 school days, divide it by 6, you have 30 cycles per year. If you're getting an increase of 2 periods of math, that's 82 minutes, times the 30 cycles, that means 900 additional minutes of math instruction over the course of the year. If you divide that 900 divided by 41 minutes, I said it's approximately 22, I didn't lie, approximately, it's 21.96. Okay, so it's just about 22 additional math class periods. When you look at 22 periods, that's a month's worth of instruction. We were able to figure this out, and I say we because it took a village of people to figure this out without, the next slide, an increase in staff, okay? And these extra 2 periods of math will be regular class periods taught by the same math teacher. So if I'm in 7th grade, math 7, and I have Mr. Paulson, period 1, I'm going to go to Mr. Paulson, period 11, 2 days a cycle. And Mr. Paulson is not going to say this is math tutor time, and he's not going to say this is study hall to get your math homework completed. This is a continuation as if it's just another period 1. It's a continuation of math instruction. Some people looked at me like, I don't quite get this. I said, what do we do in science all the time? We have honors biology that meets 8 periods, a 6-day cycle, because they have 2 labs. There are sometimes the teacher says, I don't need to use a lab this time, so I'm going to teach 2 periods that day. It's no different, right? We are moving forward instructionally. So we're delighted that we're able to offer this option. Now I'm going to say this. The kiddos who are in accelerated pre-algebra in 7th grade and the kiddos who are in accelerated algebra 1 in 8th grade are not getting the 8 periods. They are getting the 6 periods. They've been successful already. Right now I have to look at equity. What certain kids need to be successful and what certain kids don't need. That's another reason why we have to be very careful, very cautious, and very data-driven as to who we're putting in those periods to assure that they're going to be successful, right? So we couldn't do it without extra staffing for accelerated kiddos. They're still going to maintain 6 periods, but they're the ones who are, quite frankly, succeeding, okay? So again, that's the instructional minutes hope change for next school year for 7th and 8th grade math. We've already increased the number of instructional minutes K to 6 in math. We had to figure out a way to do 7th and 8th.
Yes, some new board members over the last 3-4 years, Dr. Woodard worked with the principals and the teachers to increase. First, I think it was the Hills first, yep. And then West Reading. We've known we're short minutes for a couple of years at the middle level. You know, we're not meeting the recommendations, and so there was some talk about some long-term changes and looking at the schedule, but we know that takes time. You know, that takes a couple of years really to build into adjusting the entire schedule of the building. So, you know, while the board or the district continues to tackle that, the direction was to try to find a short-term measure to make sure we could increase the minutes and still give the board time to study with the district, you know, any possible, you know, overall building schedules or things like that. They just, having lived through that in a previous district, that takes a lot of time, and you got to get people really involved, and you know, before you rush into any kind of a building change. But this allows us to maintain the majority of our schedule, but yet give the kids, you know, basically 25% more instructional time. So thank you to everybody for hard work to try to even get to this point of being able to share this.
So that's that.
Math question.
Sure.
Knowing you, the answer will be yes, but have all of the teachers that are math teachers that this involves had an opportunity to have input and know what's going on, and they would say, yes, I've been able to give input some way?
We have definitely worked, I mean, last spring, we had the math teachers together in a room and we're devising all of this. And then as of late, we've used Megan Tierney as the math department chair alongside our counselors and our administrators. So, you know, that's kind of where we are at the moment. And she's been communicating with her department that, you know, we are moving in. Again, as long as the program of studies is approved, we can move in this direction. So they want to see the course sequence changed, and they would like to see instructional minutes increase. So, you know, that is a departmental, I mean, they see that as a win-win for the math department. So, yeah. I guess the other piece is, and again, this should be very, very quick, program of studies. So that includes the math. That includes the midterm kind of, you know, final exam stuff. But it also gives those perspectives on the academic options for our students, right? So for those of you who haven't gotten a chance to see it, if you haven't had students in the secondary level, I will share that link in the Friday update with you so you can peruse it. But I want to make sure we go through this really briefly. We made mention before about new dual enrollment courses. And so dual enrollment are opportunities for folks to earn college credit while taking courses here at the high school. And for the most part, they are taught by our own teachers. We partner with RAC, Albernia, and Albright. Most of our dual enrollment courses are partnered with RAC. We had quite a few this year that were approved. They were all tied to AP courses. We decided we've got to take that next step and try to break out and get a couple of courses approved that are not AP level to try to widen the opportunity for students to earn college credit. And so it's a whole process though. It's not just our approval process, it's the approval process by the institution for the course and also the instructor. And there are some accreditation issues that we have to work through. Just so for all of you, and we can talk about this more when we meet for the new folks, but RAC charges $99 a credit, so $297 for a 3-credit course. For those students who qualify for a free and reduced lunch, we do have Title IV funds, as well as we've partnered with WAVE. They've been wonderful to help support that as well. So we do not want finances to be a barrier for our students, okay, to pursue this. We're excited because for those of you who've been through college, a lot of freshman English courses require a fundamentals of speech. And so Ms. Hatt is, she has a degree in communications, so she's been a wonderful option for us to be able to offer COM 151 through RAC. So that we think will be a hit because again, it really helps to check that one off because a lot of majors will require it. Another one that, you know, it's an AP course, yes. However, when you look at the number of students who take AP Psych, that's our kind of gateway course to AP. So Mr. Elias does a phenomenal job, and he is being approved to take that AP course and offer it. Students can take AP. They can take a dual enrollment, or they can take it both if they want to hedge their bets with that. So that would be Psychology 130. Another course that he teaches is Honors Government. So again, I'm excited about that because it's not an AP course. Lots of kids can take Honors Government, and that can count as a political science course. And then RAC is actually pushing this EDU 299 for a lot of regional schools here, and that is an internship for future educators. So we love to line students up for pathways into the field of education. And so if they're working with Mr. Yaus as an internship, and they are down at the Hills or over at West Reading or in another classroom up here, they can get the 3 credits for education seminar observing educational practices, which I think is phenomenal and a way to promote our field. In addition, Mr. Yaus, just so you know, we have students in diversified occupations now. If you remember, we brought kids back from the BCTC. We have 7 students currently in diversified occupations. It wasn't, like, the write-up was not in the program of studies last year because we were kind of developing it. So it's in as T8060. You'll see that. It's a great opportunity for our students to engage in, you know, actual work experience during the school day, could be also after the school day. But in addition to that, Mr. Yaus will be meeting with those students for a period every week. Okay, because typically what had been done at the beginning of the year, he met with them and then they went out and that was it. Like, he just checked on them on site. Now, and actually we're starting this third quarter, he's going to meet with them every week in person, in addition to going out to the job sites to visit, so we can get a more of an accountability with those students in diversified occupations. So just kind of continuing to grow and refine that as we took it over ourselves. And then the fundamental speech, I mentioned that already as a new course for dual enrollment. We don't currently offer it at all. So it's going to be a new course that is also a new course for dual enrollment. Name changes. College Board has some different rules, so they also just renamed their AP World History. It is not just that, it's now AP World History Modern. So we have to change that, so we are in alignment with the College Board. And I think you've heard me mention this a couple of times. We used to have a course that was academic economics. To be honest, didn't sound all that exciting to people. And so now we have it's actually going to be called Financial Literacy and Entrepreneurship. We have the Personal Resource Management course that's required as a graduation requirement for financial literacy, but this goes into more in depth. And Mr. Granby teaches it, and he's like really excited about really changing it to be, you know, again, very exciting and interesting for students. They're even talking about like businesses and starting up a business and why do I have Mr. Boyer? Like, there's a lot of conversations about how we can make this as authentic as possible. So we're excited to be able to offer that semester course as well next year. And then with retirements and such, we took this opportunity to change up a couple of these courses. So this it's now going to be known as Film as Literature 1 semester, and then another semester course, Film as Literature 2. Before it was a lot of film and movies, and now we're actually bringing elements of movies and literature. The first semester focuses on certain genres. The second semester focuses on other genres. So students can choose to take one semester or both, but Mr. Stanchak is going to be teaching this, and he's looking forward to that as well. I think that's exciting for students too. So we've got a couple of, again, name changes, but also some course changes, you know, with that as far as the need of that. This was simply a title change to computer-aided machining. That's 951. They're working with 3D printers, laser cutters, I don't know why that says CHE, sorry, CNC machining equipment, typo on my part. So they're actually not just designing, they are creating projects. So they wanted that machining to be in there. So we are changing the course there. And then health and phys ed, there used to be just strength and conditioning. Now there's going to be an advanced strength and conditioning, because we have kiddos who've never touched equipment versus kiddos who've used equipment for years, and they wanted to make sure that it's a little bit different. So PE is revising that and creating that course there. So in science, a couple of minor changes in course descriptions that, again, the AP wanted us, College Board wanted us to make, and I've talked ad nauseum about that. So I am not going to go any further into that. So that's what I got for program of studies.
You can breathe. That was a lot.
I think it's fun. Okay.
Thank you.
I guess all I'd ask is that if you would please consider being able to approve the program of studies at the January 22nd meeting as an action item, so that we can then kick off our course registration process for the 24-25 school year.
Anybody have any questions?
Can I audit the film as literature class?
Yeah, I was gonna can we offer that to alums through weights, because yeah, that would be super cool.
And I know our new board members, I believe on the 22nd before the meeting, get to meet with Dr. Langle and Dr. Woodard and continue to dive into, you're coming into some of these topics and there's been some backstory and background, and that's a lot to take in as a new board member, so we appreciate it. And we'll continue to schedule additional meetings. You can always reach out at any time, follow up if you want to catch up on any item, or there's a particular item you're interested in more, or maybe relates to your child and their experiences here. So feel free to reach out to Dr. Woodard, Dr. Langle, Mr. Boyer, Mr. Arns, any of us, and we'll keep working through this transition to the board. So thank you to everybody.
Yeah, please don't hesitate to reach out. We can easily schedule that little group and then one-on-one afterwards, and it's up to you.
Thank you for all this hard work, and thank you. If you would let Dr. Jones know, I know that there's been a lot of work on his part, and the math department, and let them all know that we're very appreciative of the extra work.
I do have one quick question in regards to all the changes with the math. Once we approve everything, will we be sending out an email to let parents know of the changes, or how are we going to market this,
So we will need to send out a letter specifically to the parents of 6th graders and the parents of 7th graders, because that's really where the change is for next year's 7th and next year's 8th, just so they understand the sequence. And then realistically, we could even send, that I think is the most necessary once that's been approved, and also after course recommendations, since we know who's going where. So probably a springtime situation. And then it wouldn't hurt just to focus on just letting everybody know the increased minutes in 7th and 8th grade, that they're expected to be in there those extra 2 periods every cycle. But I'm most concerned with the course sequence for those current 6th and 7th graders, just so we get that. So we've talked about that need, but again, until we identify who's doing what, I think it just makes sense to get through that process first.
Do they still do course selection night?
Yes, they do.
So you could do it there as well.
They could mention it there, absolutely.
Yeah, and then people had questions, they could follow up.
Yeah.
All right. New board members, thank you. This is good. This is a hefty, meaty month for you guys. It will ease up. We all appreciate your orientation time. You've been here before we were today. You stayed here longer than most of us will today. So thank you so much for that. We're going to adjourn with a motion, and then a reminder that Mr. Litz, our solicitor, is here, particularly to give a legal overview to the new board members. The existing board members are welcome to stay, but do not feel that they need to stay. So, do I have a motion to adjourn? A second? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay.